feel like I've underdone the brief a bit because I don't have any slick slides like Jason has before, so probably a bit of a tough act to follow. For a start, fantastic to be here this evening, and really thanks to all the community for being so welcoming over the last year. Good to see you, Martin, down the back. I remember this time last year, my wife and I attended PAX just as attendees, and we're really getting into the whole game design scene and appreciating that there is a really vibrant game design community here in Australia. And I kind of think how, fast forward 1 year and where we are now. I was lucky enough to go to Gold Coast Con at the start of the year and meet quite a few of you then. Have connected with quite a few of you online. I did an interview with Keith. Keith has returned the favour, and we met here in Melbourne for the first time. Bumped into each other a couple of nights ago, and sure enough, here we are again this evening here. So fantastic to be here, and hopefully I can add a little bit of value to you all here tonight on your game design journey. Maybe pretty similar to Jason in a way, 4 key takeaways that I really hope to communicate over the course of tonight. The first one in particular is just how mass retail works, who exactly we consider mass retail to be. Secondly, the economics of dealing with mass retail. You've probably heard some stories, largely they're true, but I'll be able to provide some insight into that in particular. Thirdly, the actual sell itself, so what do these buyers look for and how to articulate the strategy to then hopefully pique their interest. And then in spirit of it just being AFL and NRL Grand Final week, my last headline is winning the Grand Final. And I'll share more at that time with what winning the Grand Final actually means. So starting with the first point, actually what is mass retail, what do we consider by, how to approach these guys? Really when I think of mass retail, basically these are large centralised businesses, and that's the key takeaway. There's one word I want you to take away from the first theme, is everything is centralised. So some of you might own your own game store, or some of you might know your local game store owner really well. As game designers, we can go into those stores and you can probably have a conversation about getting your game in on the spot. They might be the store manager, they might be the store owner. You can have that pitch on the spot. Unfortunately for mass retail like Coles, Woolies, Kmart, Big Dog, etc., that's not quite the case. These are guys who live in their ivory tower in big scary head offices. They're not overly accessible, so you definitely need a way in. But in terms of how they work, basically every different buyer or category manager, as they like to be known as, manages a different part of the store like it's their own business. So I think about my day job with Swiss, we'll deal with the vitamins buyer, as an example. Or when I used to work at Lion selling at Dare Ice Coffee and Zupa Dupas, there'd be a category manager who'd look after the flavoured milk section, there'd be a category manager who would look after the juice section, etc. It's no different with toys and games. So yesterday I had a meeting with Woolworths, which was great, talking with the buyer there who looks after toys and games. It's not a massive part of their business. Not a lot of us go to supermarkets to come into this category, but nonetheless there is somebody who looks after toys and games. So the overall headline there is it's very hard to get into, and you probably need help through a distributor or some type of third party to facilitate that connection. So just appreciate that it all is centralised, it all is done centrally through a head office. You just can't walk into a Woolworths and Coles and hope to connect with the right decision maker. After that, if you're lucky enough to then get an order, again, all the ordering is done centralised. So again, if you currently have your games range with your local hobby store or friendly local game store, they might just give you a call, hey mate, I run out of stock, I need more stock, or they might send you an email. Again, not quite the case with mass retail. They'll send you an order through what's called EDI. Basically, it's a fancy way of saying electronic ordering, so you have to be set up with that, which I'm not. And then lastly, how does product get to store? It's all warehouse to warehouse distribution. So again, it's centralised, it's very organised business. Now me, I didn't get into game design to organise any of that stuff. And I think as all of us as game creators, we have to understand what's our threshold for what do we want to get into, what do we want to learn, and what's going to be an energy detractor, because we didn't get into this hobby to understand how to get into warehouse to warehouse logistics. So you kind of need to understand where do you want to lean in, but then also where are you going to really rely on experts and where are you going to rely on wholesales and distributors to make that happen for you. So overall, have the key takeout. First one, everything is centralised, and be prepared. You can't deal with sophisticated retail. Secondly, from an economics perspective, the overall headline is the rule of 30. So you'll see the game here captured, I'm showcasing here tonight. After 4.5 years of development, it's finally hitting the shelf in a couple of weeks. I'm pretty stoked for that. So, at the risk of tooting my own horn, you think, I've got Marvel on board, I've got artwork from the MCU, surely this is like the $39 minimum game, right? Like, I'm not a Catan champion, but I played a lot of Catan like Jason has, and that's retails in the 60s to 80s, depending on the retail they're in. Surely we can put a $39 price point on it. Unfortunately, Kmart and Big W said basically no. Right? Now, you'll go into Kmart and Big W where it's here, while you're in Melbourne or when you go back home. And yes, there are games on those shelves such as Catan that have a 4 price point in front of it or a 5 price point in front of it. What I'd probably encourage you to do is take a step back and then just think about, okay, what's the total share of shelf here? Where do most games retail? And they'll typically have a 2 in front of the price, right? So typically we're looking at 20, 25, 29. 29 is what we settle on. So be prepared to make the economics of your game work for a $30 maximum price. And then you as the creator, how much of that $30 do you get to keep? Again, it's the rule of 30s. Work to 30%, try for harder than that for sure. But by the time you sell into a distributor, who then sells into a retailer, who then adds GST, you can see that there's not all that much left for us as the creator at the end of it. So 30% of $30 is $9. So try to get the economics to work at $9. Thirdly, on the how, I've got my time check, so I'll try and just get through the last 2 points reasonably quickly. So really with these category managers, it's their job to grow their category. We're all zany game creators, right, who love our games like it's our own babies, it's in our nature. But from their perspective, they're thinking, how do I drive my category sales? How do I drive my category margin? And how is your game going to target my target shopper? So who are my shoppers who are coming in? And fundamentally, what type of, what's my strategy that I'm looking to achieve? So have a really good understanding of who do you think the shopper is in that environment. Typically the main grocery buyer is like families. I think Kmart and Big W toys appeal largely to families as well, which is largely simple games within that. So keep the shopper in mind. But then if you're lucky enough to have this pitch with the category manager, take the time to ask questions like, what's your strategy? What type of price points are you looking for? What subcategories are you most interested in? In my case, are you interested in licensed products? Are you looking to take big bets with innovation? What's your risk profile like? Ask, but also have an understanding of what you think they might be looking for before you go in. Because ultimately you want your game set up for success, right? You don't want to go in there and it bombs. You want to make sure that it's a long-term staple for years to come. And doing your research up front is a really critical component of that. And that leads me to my fourth and final point with winning the grand final. What does that mean? Getting ranging is awesome enough, right? That's cause for celebration. And don't get me wrong, when Kmart and Big W said yes to capture, I was certainly celebrating. But in many ways, that's like getting to the grand final, right? Like you've done all this work, you've done your pre-season, you've done your play testing, you've done your play testing, you've done your play testing, you've done your play testing. But at the end of the day, that's getting to the game. You make it to the game once you're in there, but you haven't won the game. And why is that the case? Because just like they're fielding pitches now to see whether your game will go in, guess what? In 12 months' time, they're going to be doing exactly the same thing, and shelf space is not elastic. So if your game doesn't perform, your one's going to come out, and something else is going to go in. So that's what I see as really winning the grand final. Have a plan in there, just like how Jason said, you've got to do your pre-launch, you've got to do your launch, you've got to have your post-launch. Don't celebrate too hard if you get in. I'm pretty nervous, to be honest, the capture's going in, because I know that it has to perform, right? And I know that if it performs, fantastic. Hopefully it'll be a long-term staple in Kmart and Big W. Hopefully that'll lead to export opportunities as well, which is where the real size of prize is. So I think that's what I mean by winning the grand final, really. It's all very well and good to get ranged, but really that's just the opportunity. Make sure you seal the deal by getting really strong rates of sale in that first year. And what I mean by strong rates of sale is the benchmark is normally about 1 unit per store per week that game has to sell. So I think about that overall, like Kmart has about 400 stores. If on average you can order average 400 units sold per week, it's probably a good chance of staying in there beyond this year, and hopefully the year beyond that, the year beyond that. But as soon as it drops against that rate of sale, you've got to have a pretty good understanding of what uniqueness does it add, or what your point of difference is, that they're still going to be willing to invest their shelf space in a product that isn't meeting their minimum hurdle requirement. So again guys, on reflection, the 4 key takeaways. The first one in particular is really just understanding what mass retail is. And again, the key word there, it's all about centralisation. Second one in particular is the economics. Rule of 30s, don't love the rule of 30s, but it's a rule of the game. If you can get better than that, fantastic, but don't expect it. Third one, understand their strategy. If you can go in there and ask questions, or you have an idea of what their strategy is, they'll see it as a win. So they're trying to grow their sales, they're trying to grow their profit, so make sure you have a storyline to that. And fourthly, win the grand final by staying in there beyond your first 12 months, and make sure you hit the marketing hard, or have a plan to make sure that you deliver their sales so that they like you, and then in 12 months' time they're looking for your second, third and fourth game, etc. So Yeah, look forward to meeting hopefully some more of you this evening as well. I've got a podcast interview series, Borderline Genius. I know some of you have seen it, had quite a few of you on. So if you found a little bit of insight with what I said tonight, this is to try and bit value that I try and add back to the community. And of course, Capture as well. Showcasing in a pack, launches in a couple of weeks, so feel free to come over and take it and see how it all works. Thanks so much.